This is a 8 postmortem where I basically go over what went right and what went wrong. It's a turn-based strategy game. It has minimal graphics and it's going to do poorly in the reviews, and I'm going to explain why. The funny thing is that I set out to do a strategy game, even before it started. But the thing is that a strategy game doesn't work for Andy. There are actually 3 reasons why it doesn't work. The first reason is that for a platformer, everybody knows how to play a platformer, you know, everybody's played Mario. But with a strategy game, the first thing is that it's not popular among, you know, a large portion of the player base. So you need time to learn how it works, especially since every strategy game works differently. And this one is not helpful at all. So this is the first problem. The second problem is that it takes time to test a strategy game. And when you're judging Ludum Dare entries, you don't have that much time. And the third problem with the game is that you actually need friends to play it. It's a 3-player game. You cannot adjust that anywhere. There's no AI because we wanted to do one, but it took so long to get to a basic state where the game actually is playable that we didn't have time to add anything fancy. That's it. We didn't get a chance. We didn't even get a chance to balance the game. I have no idea if the game is balanced. It's totally possible that some units are really overpowered, and I think the buildings aren't strong enough. But that's something that you get from playing the game over and over, and that's something that you don't have the time to do in a jam. When trying to design the game, we knew we wanted to make a strategy game, but we didn't know exactly how it would work out, what would be the basic gameplay elements. And we thought we'd take inspiration from a few games that we like. So 3 games I like very much are Warcraft 2, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, and Civilization 5. And so there are interesting elements in all these games that I liked and that I wanted to put into our game. One of the things that I really liked about Heroes 3 is how you have stacks of units. So it doesn't actually get crowded in the map like it gets in Warcraft 2, for example, because you're not struggling to get your units somewhere, because you have 220 archers on the same spot, and then you can move them all at once. So the downside is that sometimes you get really overpowered, because if you can successfully acquire a huge stack of any unit, really, you have an advantage. But since Heroes 3 is so well balanced, it takes time to amass this amount of units, so it's not a problem in practice. What we stole from Civilization 5 is that in Civ you have tiles that actually can belong to one of your cities, and you can buy more tiles, and each tile has a certain amount of natural resources that you can build tile improvements on, and then you exploit these resources and they add to your wealth. So in other strategy games like Warcraft 2 or StarCraft, what happens is that you have workers that have to go exploit the resources by hand. You have peons if you're playing as an orc in Warcraft 2, and you actually have to go and tell them to go to these woods and chop them down, or go to this mine and collect the gold and bring it back to your town hall. So we didn't actually want to have this kind of thing happening, because that doesn't really work in a turn-based strategy game. So that's why in Civ you have tile improvements that you can build, and then you have a steady income of gold and other resources. And in Warcraft 2 you actually have workers that are busy all over the map. And in Heroes it's actually even worse, because you have to go collect it yourself. Of course you have mines for various resources, but you have lots of resources on the map that are punctual, that you can pick up once and then they disappear, and you have actually to explore the map and pick them up yourself. So one of the design goals was that we wanted something that is low maintenance, that you didn't have to always go all over the map and do lots of manual operations to get your finances going. We wanted to have a high-level overview of the strategy of your team, and just capture a few resource points in the beginning and then be done with it. Then you're like, it's enough. I can sustain a war and that, and then make units and then place them strategically, and then plan your attack or your defense depending on what's your best bet at this point. And so another important decision was the tile choice. So in Warcraft 2, it's not visible, but it's actually square tiles, really tiny square tiles, and then you have pathfinding so that units can find their way from one point to another, and sometimes it doesn't work at all. Pathfinding in Warcraft 2 is actually very weak. In Heroes 3, it's very different because Heroes is a game where you have separate exploration and combat modes. Civ has pathfinding as well, but it's not, it's something that we could do much simpler. I actually implemented A-star pathfinding for Paper Isaac, but we didn't need to use it here. All we did was actually take a region and then takes all the neighbors and then so on until you've reached the maximum movement points of the unit, and that gives you an area where the unit can go. And then when you actually order the unit to go somewhere, I just have a breadth first search, like take every neighbor and then every neighbor of the neighbors and so on until you reach the destination. And the first path you find is the shortest one because you're actually using breadth first search, not depth first search. So we didn't want to have simple hexagonal tiles, and we didn't want to have square tiles either because those are overdone, they're in every game. And so what we wanted to do is something a bit more like Risk, except Risk has regions that are inspired by the actual geography of the world, and we want something and generate. And so what we did is have actually square tiles, but divided into an octagon and then 4 triangles. And those 5 polygons can belong to any region. So when generating the region, we first assign the octagons to regions, and then we have a second pass where we assign the triangles to a neighboring region, and we iterate until every polygon has been assigned. So the result is actually pretty cool, and it's probably the coolest thing in the game, apart from the music, for anyone who doesn't really like strategy games. It's just like, it looks cool. But it took time to get to that point. And then the problem is that every octagon has 8 neighbors and every triangle has 3 neighbors. And so competing the neighbors of the regions is something that took me some time because there was a lot to think about how we're going to store these regions and these polygons in memory, how we can access them in an efficient way that is useful for our primitive pathfinding algorithm, and for choosing the colors of the regions so that they don't collide. You don't have 2 regions of the same color that are side by side, and so that it would get confusing. But eventually we did it. So it took us 2 days and a half to get actually this system working. And in the 2 days and a half, you can include the time that it took to actually sell on a tiling method, which was a problem. That explains why we didn't have much time to add polish to the game. As for programming, it actually went pretty well, except that I was tired all the time and I couldn't concentrate. But otherwise, I used the same tools that I usually do, which is my own programming language, OC, that I've been working on since 2009. And it's actually pretty nice now. Sometimes you have really weird errors, and it takes a little bit of know-how, vivid experience to know where they actually come from, which is, I think, the problem with any tool that's not in wide use. You can't really rely on the huge amount of people using it to tell you how it works, but since I'm the one who's guilty for most of the bugs, then I know where they are and I can avoid them. So that wasn't a huge problem. It was actually a time saver because I've coded a lot in other languages. they all have flaws as well. So it's not too depressing to use your own language and be faced with your own shortcomings, and you're like, yeah, I still haven't done that. I haven't fixed that yet, but it's okay because right now I'm in crunch mode. I just want to finish that game. But one of the big problems is that our game is based on polygons, and most of my previous games for previous Ludum Dare entries or One Game a Month were based on sprites. So the engine that I developed recently on top of OpenGL 3 and SDL2 is really good at sprites. You can put a shit ton of sprites on the screen, and you can make them transparent, you can color them, you can scale them, you can rotate them, which is it's basics, but it works really well, and you can center them, and you can and I actually fixed the font rendering just before the Ludum Dare started. But what it's not good at is rendering primitives that have non-square shapes. We actually spent maybe half the time figuring out which sprites do we need so that we can place them in the right spot and then rotate them so that they have the right orientation, and then overlay them so that we actually have the impression that it's actually rendering polygons. And so that took a lot of time, and that's definitely one of the points that I think might be improved. And I think before the next jam, what I'm going to do is add the ability for the engine to display random polygons. So now on to the things that actually went well. It's the first Ludum Dare that I did with Sylvain from start to finish. It was their old time, even a little bit before. And so we really had time to work together, and it was really motivating to work in a team, and frustrating as well because it's never easy. And he did a fantastic job on the music. I really love it. I did one track and he did the 4 others, and we actually released an album on Bandcamp and got 2 sales. So it's more than we ever got, given that we haven't released anything else commercially. Code-wise, compiling for Windows and Mac went really well. I was able to put up both versions pretty fast on the website. Compiling for Linux worked too, but the problem is it's really hard to package right, because you have to have a 30-bit version and a 64-bit version, and then a launcher script that detects the architecture of the machine you're trying to run it on, and then launches the right executable, and then you have to manually find out what libraries you're using, because you don't want to tell people, hey, you can run this, but first you gotta install SDL by hand, and it's not even there's not even a package for that. Time, and actually maybe in my timeline I didn't spend enough time to hate it just yet. I'm actually pretty enthusiastic about releasing updates with, you know, maybe an actual AI, maybe networked gameplay, and maybe more hints about what is actually going on in the game, so that players that were not there when we designed the game can actually play it and enjoy it. And then maybe we could add different unit types and more depth to the game. But we'll see about that. I don't even know. I don't even know if there's a demand for that. I don't know if I should go back to older projects and finish them, like Biobai, or I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I had a blast. and it was fun, and I'm looking forward to the next one. So anyway, thanks for watching, and you can subscribe if you want to see me ranting. Have a nice day.